Recorded to the cloud now.
Wonderful. Well, hello and welcome to the HSCI Hindu Chaplaincy Resource Center Speaker Series for August 23rd, 2024, with our special guest today, Dr. Judith Ragsdale, G. My name is Zachary Ginder, and I, along with my esteemed colleagues, will be helping facilitate the conversation today. I'd also like to express an especially warm welcome to anyone joining us for the first time and those from interfaith or other diverse backgrounds. I see some new faces here this time, so welcome. I would like to introduce the Dean of the Hindu Spiritual Care Institute, Gaurav Rastogi, to provide a brief welcome, and then we'll jump back in. Gauravji?
Well, good afternoon, and Judith, welcome to today's conversation, and to everybody else who's joining us right now live or later. Welcome to this series of conversations. We're part of the Hindu Spiritual Care Institute, which is an institute dedicated to creating interreligious Hindu chaplains and supporting the work of chaplains and spiritual care providers worldwide. And this is an important service, so we really appreciate Judy's time. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. With that, Zachary, I turn it back to you.
Thanks, Gauravji. And to provide a little additional context under the umbrella of HSCI, or the Hindu Spiritual Care Institute, our Chaplaincy Resource Center is truly dedicated to providing reliable, authenticated information that supports interreligious spiritual care. So we really strive to promote education, training, and effective utilization of spiritual care resources. And we're open to not only our HSCI members, but also other individuals from other traditions and walks of life. So it is now my absolute pleasure to welcome our special guest, Dr. Judith Ragsdale. Judy G is a qualitative researcher with a background as a clinical pastoral education certified educator, aka ACPE. She is an associate professor emerita with the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. She's currently leading a study exploring how leaders and members of different faith traditions are guided by their beliefs and practices in times of serious illness. She received one of the first ACPE Innovation in Spiritual Care and Research grants to carry out the study, called Expanding Chaplain Competencies. Her PhD is in Leadership and Change from Antioch University in Ohio. She served as the Director of Pastoral Care and as the Director of Education and Research at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center in Cincinnati. She lives in Cincinnati with her partner, Leslie, their two dogs, Elgin and Whiskey, and their cat, Mr. Monk. I hope we'll see those folks today.
I very much hope you will not hear them. We'll see.
Okay. Likewise, I have two dogs in my room here too. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Judith Ragsdale G. Judy G, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and thank those of you who have come from my CPE communities. That is lovely, and John Eman, who has been a huge help to me in several of my projects. Welcome to you all, and thank you most especially Gaurav Ji and Zachary Ji and Acharya and Mangala. Thank you for being here. So I will now attempt to share my screen again. Let's see how this will be. And I will press this little thing. Let's see. Let's see here. So I will do a lot of talking, which I'm sorry about, but I will hopefully leave space for us to have conversation at the end. The byword of the University of Cincinnati, I think, is not necessarily intuitive. Next lives here. So I like to say, well, at the University of Cincinnati, this is what they say: we realize the impact our teaching, research, and service can have on our community and the world. So we don't wait for change to happen. We break boundaries, boldly imagine, and create what's next. So that's where that came from. Now, before we begin, I wanted to say that this research project is underway. So what you'll hear today are stories from individual participants. This is not themes developed from analysis of the interviews and focus groups. If you know anything about qualitative research, you know that's the goal, but we are not there yet. So what I'm going to do is just talk you through how the project is. No. Talk you through where we are with the project, but most importantly, begin to tell you some stories from the people I've been able to interview. Seeking to develop tradition-aware chaplain competencies does not mean that chaplains must know all there is to know about multiple traditions. That's, of course, not possible. I do suspect tradition-aware chaplain competencies will most probably include developing partnerships with leaders from multiple traditions. The basis for this project, I think behind every research project lies an event or realization that leads the researcher to seek deeper understanding. I don't know that that's true, but I suspect it is. So for me, the first event was a religious controversy about the Roman Catholic Eucharist. If you are not familiar with that sacrament, I didn't want to explain it differently, so I've looked up exactly how to explain it in case you're not aware. The Roman Catholic Eucharist, also known as Holy Communion, is a central sacrament in the Catholic faith. It's believed to be the true presence of Jesus Christ in the form of bread and wine. In the Roman Catholic Church, the Eucharist is primarily dispensed by ordained ministers, which is to say priests or bishops. In addition to bishops and priests, deacons and specifically appointed laypersons known as extraordinary ministers or Eucharistic ministers can assist in distributing the Eucharist in cases of necessity. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is that everybody dispensing the Eucharist is Roman Catholic. In this particular event, a Roman Catholic CPE student noticed that in the department where I was working at the time, non-Catholic chaplains, even non-Christian chaplain, were dispensing the Roman Catholic Eucharist. And so he said, this is not okay. And he went to the department director who said, well, the Roman Catholics on staff support this, and this is how our department practices, and that's the way it is. And the student said, well, if we don't change that, I think I'll have to go to the bishop, my bishop, and long story, a little bit shorter, that's ultimately what he did, and it became an extremely contentious event in the life of the department. For me, I was very embarrassed that I did not know how the Roman Catholic Eucharist was supposed to be dispensed. And I was also really struck that instead of feeling apologetic and quickly correcting this, members of the department felt empowered to criticize the way the Roman Catholic Church managed their sacrament. And so, based on the concept of looking deeper for why a situation might exist, I began to notice that nothing in CPE or in board certification competencies requires anyone to demonstrate competence with any tradition other than their own, which seemed really like a big miss, particularly in the profession of chaplaincy. So the next event was a Jehovah's Witness family. I don't know if you're familiar with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a Christian group. Some Christians do not believe the Jehovah's Witnesses are Christian. I really think tradition-aware chaplaincy means seeing a tradition through the eyes of those in the tradition. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are a wonderful group. They have two different groups that are focused on those in the hospital. One are patient visitors, and the other are hospital liaison committee members who their goal and their task is to help patients and families only when requested understand how their faith would guide them in medical decision-making. A huge thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is they do not believe in receiving blood transfusions. In the Christian Bible, they have several verses that they count as holding authority, and they say that Jehovah, which is how they call God, does not want anyone who is a Jehovah's Witness to receive a blood transfusion. So very shortly after I became the director, the hospital liaison committee members came to see me, and they said, oh, don't worry, if an ethical issue comes up, we go to the ethics department. And I said, well, if we do good advocacy for your religious needs, we may not have an ethical issue, so let's see what we can do. Well, not a month later, a situation came up where a very sick child had been seen by the surgeon about 2 months ahead of the surgery. And the surgeon had said, "Oh, I don't anticipate any blood transfusions." Well, a week before the child's surgery, the surgeon said, "Oh, we may need a blood transfusion, not to worry." Huge event in the life of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And they called the hospital liaison committee person, who said, "We've got all kinds of consultation that we would use. We would take the patient to another hospital if we're going to have to go to court, because in pediatrics, often a Jehovah's Witness family will need to go to court if they don't give consent for what the medical team thinks is a needed transfusion." They said, "We don't have time to do any of this, and this is really disrespectful of our community." To which I said, "You're right." And this was fascinating to me. The Jehovah's Witnesses knew the hospital policy for Jehovah's Witnesses and blood transfusion, but I did not. And so what we did was get together an interdisciplinary group at the hospital, including hospital administrators, went over the policy. But what the interventions were that I really thought were important were, we began a process where, based on the admissions of Jehovah's Witnesses or the planned surgery, the chaplains each day got notice of the Jehovah's Witnesses coming into the hospital or scheduled for surgery. At that point, the chaplain for that family would then send the medical doctor, "This is the Jehovah's Witness policy. This is what we do for Jehovah's Witnesses." And they would call the witness family and say, "We respect your faith. We have given your physician information about your beliefs. If you need us to help contact the hospital liaison committee for you, we are able to do that." And then I thought this was very cool. The electronic medical record, so EPIC, for those of you who practice in hospitals, is a major medical record group. The EPIC folks, in concert with this upgraded policy and what we were doing, built into every time blood would be ordered for a Jehovah's Witness patient, there would come a pop-up screen, and the provider would have to answer 4 questions. Have you talked to pastoral care about this family? Have you talked with them about what blood products they will or will not accept? If you think a transfusion is indicated, have you talked with them about that? And if they have not given their consent, have you let them know that we may need to go to court? And before those questions, before the blood could be ordered for the Jehovah's Witness patient, those questions had to be answered. I can tell you the Jehovah's Witnesses felt enormously respected at this hospital. And I felt like this was an appropriate use of chaplain's authority in tradition-aware chaplaincy. So, given the lack of required preparation to engage a common belief system in the United States, Roman Catholicism, might CPE and chaplaincy benefit from research exploring how patients from different traditions describe how their beliefs and practices impact their health care? And given the importance of the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs and practices in the realm of healthcare, might other traditions also have beliefs and practices that impact their healthcare? I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is not a new model for chaplaincy. This will build on existing board certification competencies. And again, more than happy to share the slide deck so that you can see these, and build on ACPE outcomes. One thing I will say about one of the components of outcome 3, the spiritual values-based orienting system, all 4 elements, so beginning plus, advanced plus, we're calling those different things now, are all about the student's own orienting system, which is the student's worldview. So what I really hope we will do in this project is help chaplains and certified educators, so CPE students, become equipped to understand how orienting systems or worldviews work in different traditions. The goals of this research project are to develop an experiential understanding of the depth of belief systems not our own, to develop tradition-aware chaplain competencies, and to promote the need to partner with religious, spiritual, and secular leaders in the community. Again, there is no way any chaplain can understand all of the different belief traditions. Partnership is essential. These are the participants to date, and you'll say, wow, how come you like the Buddhists and the Christians so much more than the Baha'i? No, I come back to the fact that ongoing recruitment of participants. Hindus, and we are ongoing. Gwara has been Gwara G. I love this. Thank you so much, Zachary G, for helping me know how to speak respectfully. Gwara G has agreed to put together a focus group with Hindus. So I'm very excited about that. These are the humanist. Jewish, I have spoken with Orthodox rabbis as well as Reform rabbis and Reform cantors, and that too, ongoing recruitment. The Muslim tradition, 3 imams, 2 ACP certified educators, and one of the Jewish rabbis was a certified educator, and 1 member. Also, mostly Sunni, but some Shia representation, and Native American spiritualities, which one of the people I interviewed said there are hundreds of Native American spiritualities. So what I have spoken with as a person who's following the Navajo, who's a Navajo chief, and 2 Christians who are interested in the Lakota path as well as their Christianity. And the Navajo chief also does some work with the Lakota. So if we had more time, and you can tell I'm speed talking, and I do apologize for that. If I'm talking too fast, those of you that are on my screen should wave your arms around. So what I wanted to do, though, is just take a minute. These are the questions that I will lead the focus group participants through. So if you would just take a minute and think about a time you or someone you love had serious illness and was hospitalized. And just answer these questions for yourself. And then, of course, when I interview leaders, what I'm doing is saying, in the group that you serve, what are you hearing from people? And so the first question is, how did you understand through the lens of your belief tradition why this illness had happened? And this is medical illness, or bad accident, or mental illness. And so in your tradition, why did this illness come about? The next question. All right. Yes. What in your beliefs and practices from your tradition brought you comfort and strength? And if I'm sharing my screen, gosh, I'm sorry. Let's get rid of all of me. I'm sorry about that. I realized I was looking, I'm thinking, oh, it's good to see people. But then I realized, well, you can't see what's on the screen. What in your beliefs and practices brought you comfort and strength in serious illness? What beliefs and practices in your tradition guided you in making medical decisions? What helped you navigate spiritual struggle? And did anyone intentionally or unintentionally disrespect your tradition's beliefs or practices while you were in the hospital? Okay. Jan, you probably don't want to be seen. Let's see here. I was thinking it might be good to be able to see me, but I don't know how to do that without there. Will that work? Yeah, that'll work. So these are the questions, and this is how, when we get to the stories in this lecture, this is how these stories are set up. So next, no, next. The theoretical basis for this project, the first Duration of the theory, religiously informed, relationally skillful chaplaincy theory. The first component is that patients use beliefs and practices from their tradition in their clinical context, so in the hospital, to understand their healthcare situation, to cope, and to make medical decisions. The second component of the theory is chaplains are the healthcare team members whose role it is to address the patient and family's beliefs and practices with the healthcare team, with the patients and families, and with the healthcare team. And essential to that is the chaplain's relational skill. The third component is healthcare team members incorporate the chaplain's assessment into the treatment plan. So the chaplain's assessment of the patient's beliefs and practices that are relevant to the treatment plan are incorporated in. I've updated the theory because, as you can see, RIRSCT that Kate and I worked on, Kate Desjardins, does not roll off the tongue. Plus, there's been more research, and so I love tradition-aware chaplaincy theory, which spells TACT. So it implies the chaplain's relational skill, and it incorporates also spiritual struggle, which I will say more about in a minute. The recent research supporting this project, Spirituality and Serious Illness and Health. This is a list of many of the who's who in spirituality and health. They reviewed, in 2022, this paper came out, they reviewed 371 papers that produced several results, the first of which, I'm not going to go through them all, spirituality is important to most patients with serious illness. The literature estimates ranged from 71% to 99%. Balboni and colleagues' work suggests that patients and medical personnel would benefit from chaplains having a reliably skilled ability to address many faith traditions. And this is just going to read this line. One of the implications highlights the need to involve spiritual care professionals, for example, chaplains, in the care of patients with serious illness. Such professionals trained to address spiritual needs in a manner sensitive to the patient's particular spirituality, ranging from spiritual not religious to myriad religious traditions, can administer more in-depth spiritual assessments and interventions, and also serve as a liaison as necessary to patients' spiritual communities. I cannot say some chaplains don't do that. Some chaplains do that. What I can say is that no one is required in CPE to learn how to do that, and no one is required in board competencies to demonstrate the capacity to do that. So while we are saying, yes, you must demonstrate religious and cultural humility, we are not saying, let's see you do that with a patient from a tradition other than your own, or if you're a certified educator, let's see you do that with a student from a tradition other than your own as they're caring for a patient from a tradition other than their own. So, but the literature is saying that this is a function that is needed in healthcare. Other recent research is Ken Pargamet and Julie Exline. Ken Pargamet is an enormously prolific psychologist who has written a lot about religion and coping. His book in 1997, Spiritually Integrated Psychotherapy, the book he wrote in 2007, and this one, Working with Spiritual Struggles in Psychotherapy with Julie Exline. They're both clinical psychologists, researchers, and practitioners. I want to just read you the last line. Guilford published this book, and Ken and his colleagues have done many research projects. And I counted in Spiritually Integrated Psychotherapy 250 peer-reviewed articles referenced in that book, and I think there are every bit as many in Working with Spiritual Struggles. So Guilford says, in this book, clinicians learn sensitive, culturally responsive ways to address different types of spiritual struggle. And I think I forgot to say when I was going through the questions before, what the spiritual struggles are defined as. I'm not sure if I did or not. Anyway, spiritual struggles are a struggle with whatever you call divine, whatever is sacred, if you feel abandoned, or if you just begin to lose your faith altogether. And if you're humanist, if your core values are not serving you. The second type of spiritual struggle is if your community has not helped you. And the third, I think I did talk about that. Y'all are also polite. You should just say, hey, move it along. So the stories you'll hear today should not be seen as, oh, here's a story from the Muslim tradition. This is what all Muslims believe. What this is meant to do is open one person's experience from their tradition that at least tells you something important for that person about their tradition and may give you language. So let's get going with the stories. Why people get sick, a Muslim perspective. And I want you to know, after I do the interviews, I read the transcript, I send it back to the person I've interviewed and ask them to correct anything that wasn't clear. A lot of people respond. This imam did. Some folks are like, this is 40 pages long. I'm sure it's fine. So, but they have the opportunity to go over it. So I'm going to read a little more. I didn't want to fill up the whole screen. First and foremost, this imam said, in our tradition, there's no denial of bacteria or physical things that cause illness. So, for example, when the plague occurred in the Muslim Empire, you had the leaders of the Muslim world telling people, don't go into the cities. And from that, we learned that the Muslim folks believed it was a physical thing. They understood the spread of diseases, so there's no denial of science. He said, this is a very important thing to understand. The second thing is, coupled with understanding science, the way we integrate our belief in God and theology. And he didn't want to use the name Allah because he said some people don't understand that Allah is God. And so he had learned from his teacher that it's better if you're in a mixed culture to use the word God, which is what he chose to do. But he said, God creates everything. And so God creates disease. He created all things. And so when a Muslim is facing illness, there's a balanced understanding of, on one hand, this is just something that happens, it's a physical manifestation of illness. On the other hand, this is something that God has planned. And because God has planned it, there's no way for me to escape it. And the idea is that this is part of God's plan, and that will create, hopefully, a sense of solace and tranquility and not despair, because I am living God's plan for me. So this is from a Hindu leader. And so one of the first things that came to mind repeatedly that comes up for patients is, what did I do in my past, in my current life, or in my past life? So the theory of karma comes up a lot whenever they say, what have I done to deserve this? Where is this coming from? Is this an outcome of something I did in this life, knowingly or unknowingly, but also it could be out of their control, which would be a previous life, because Hindus believe in reincarnation. And we believe that, we don't just live one life, we live over multiple lives until we attain moksha, who this Hindu leader said is loosely translated as liberation from the cycle of birth and death. And much of that happens, you're accumulating karma, but you have to live your life in a way that dissolves karma. But this is very theoretical, philosophical language, and it doesn't always fully translate to people in lay terms. But this leader said, this idea of karma, that you must have done something to deserve this, is very deeply ingrained. Again, this is one Hindu person's perspective. What brings strength and comfort? This was the Navajo chief who told a personal story. His daughter was seriously ill when she was born. And he said, But what the hospital was able to provide us with any type of spiritual support, what I can get outside the hospital, it's just night and day. And so I just completely put all my cards outside the hospital for that time. So he said it was very separated. He said at one point we had done a ceremony. I learned that ceremony is enormous in the Navajo path and also in the Lakota path. We had done a ceremony for her for the entire night. And so we received a bundle of medicine. It's like our herbal medicine we had in a little prayer bundle. They call it a prayer tie. It's like a piece of cloth. You put the medicine in it, and then there are blessings with certain medicines, and they pray with it all night. And you say, okay, now the medicine, the good thoughts are here. Take this to your daughter. And so we did. We took it to the hospital and we hung it above her bed. I thought this was a good thing to know about. The other thing he said, and he said his daughter was in a coma for several days. He said, we played music for her. We played native, indigenous, spiritual, ceremonial songs. And he said, as a chief, a lot of these are songs that I sing in ceremony. And so I recorded those. So when I was at work or wasn't there, the nurses could just come and press play. So my daughter could hear that wherever she was in her mind and in her spirit. So I thought that was beautiful. This is a combined story from a Hindu chaplain, both of what brought comfort and also what helped with medical decision making. This is a story of a patient with stage 2 colon cancer. And so the chaplain, in doing spiritual assessments, asks some questions. What do your parents do when they practice? And so they mentioned that and I looked this up, but forgive me if I mispronounce it, they use Hanuman Chalisa, which is one of the prayer recitations. And she said, this is not a typical thing that would be a go-to for a lot of people practicing the Hindu tradition, but for this family, it was very important to them. This is what their parents had done, and this brought them comfort. They had grown up with this practice. So she said to them, pray to Hanuman. That will bring you a sense of safety and devotion. And I will bring you some prayer beads. So some mala, if you're comfortable with that, and recite the Hanuman Chalisa as you do your prayer beads. And that will help you calm down as you're making these decisions with respect to your upcoming surgery and all of the information that's coming at you. And so she said the last time she saw them before they left the hospital, he was discharged. She said he was going to have most of his treatment as an outpatient. She said they had started doing the prayer beads, and they said it was really, really helpful. It gave them a sense of being surrounded in safety while they were at the hospital. It helped calm their nerves. And they said that they were helped to really see through the information that was being given to them, not to either sugarcoat it, but to accept it and to guide them in what was required of them. So that is both bringing comfort and helping with medical decision making. This is a Jewish story from a Reform rabbi. I thought this was a fascinating story. I can't quite get my little book here in the right place. So this rabbi said, I haven't been in a congregation for a couple of years, but the matter that keeps coming up, especially in my area, is medical assistance in dying. What does Judaism say about ending your own life? You know, choosing how to end your own life and for what reasons. And there are a range of answers. And the Reform Responsa Committee, which I sit on, this rabbi said, is a committee that deliberates on matters of Jewish law for the Reform Jewish movement. And it's recently come out with a teshuva, an answer to this question, which is surprisingly permissive. And so he said again, he had not been personally in a congregation. He's serving somewhere else right now, but for the last couple of years, he's had colleagues who have congregants choosing medical assistants in dying who want to understand the Jewish background. So he brings up this story that Judaism tells that he says he would share with congregant if he had this situation. There's a famous story about the rabbi who's being kept alive by the prayers of all the other rabbis, and his maid, which is ironic because medical assistance and dying spells maid. But this poor rabbi is trying to die, and all of the rabbis are praying for him, praying for him. It's keeping him alive. Finally, she throws a plate on the floor, so they'll be startled, stop praying, and he'll have the space to die. And so he said, so in that situation, he would tell a congregant, it is okay for you to choose to stop treatment based on this story from our Jewish practice. And he said, they're not telling him, they're not asking the rabbis, tell us yes or no, but tell us the background, the values, and the traditions that Judaism has to offer. This is a very cool story. This was a consult that a chaplain received about an 80-year-old Hindu patient who was not taking her medicine. And so they looked up, okay, this is a Hindu woman, somebody get the Hindu chaplain, of whom, as you may imagine, there are very, very few. So this chaplain goes, and the bottom line is the patient isn't taking her medicine because nobody's given her a bath. And because nobody has given her a bath, she explains to me that many practicing Hindus will need to shower or bathe before they can do their prayer rituals. And then when they do their prayer rituals, oh, thank you so much, Gaurav ji, and also Zachary ji for nodding. Then they do their prayer rituals, then they eat, and then they can take medicine in her case. So she is a person that practices in this way. And so the chaplain gives this beautiful example of just, oh, she's Indian, I'm Indian, we speak Hindi, although her English is excellent. And I say, oh, so you haven't taken your medicine? And so she finds out it's because she hasn't been given a bath. She goes back to the nurse and says, nobody's given her a bath, which must happen, and explains how this all works. And the nurse is like, that's all it is? She sends an aide in who gives the woman a sponge bath. She's then able to say her prayers. She's then able to eat. She's then able to take her medication. As chaplain aware or tradition aware chaplaincy goes, that seems like a crucial thing to understand about a Hindu practice around taking medication. I thought that was fascinating. Spiritual struggle. This story comes from a 70-year-old African Methodist Episcopal church steward, which is a lay member in the church who's able to help the pastor with a lot of things. This woman tells an amazing story of having been born in the South in 1953 with serious kidney disease. Her mother was very, very young, and the doctors told her, this child will not live to be 6 years old. And so her grandmother, who was a woman of faith, had her own spiritual struggle with this and said, no, I am giving her back to the Lord, and got her on a bus and took her out west to be with an evangelist that she believed in. And in that process, gave her back to the Lord. And this woman said, when things get bad these days, I can go in my room and fall down on my knees and say, Lord, Lord, why have you forsaken me? Which are the words that Jesus says on the cross as he is dying. And she said, I can say these words because the Lord said this to his Father. And then she said, the Lord will bring me back to recollection. So wait a minute, she called her name. Now, I brought you from a 3-year-old all the way up to a 70-year-old. Have you forgotten? And she says, sometimes he has to make us think too, even in our generation. So that's 2 layers of spiritual struggle that was very important for this woman to tell. This is a very difficult story. A man that was 36, diagnosed with glioblastoma, brain cancer, had a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and his thing was, why me? And he had done all of the practices. If I can easily find this line, because you would know immediately, but all of the rituals at marriage, at all of the different things he had done. Samskara, is that it? He had been very faithful to all that he should do. And so he said, have I done something so bad in this life or so bad in a previous life that this must come to me? And this Hindu lay leader wanted so much to reassure him, and many people around him, certainly his parents, were saying, no, no, you're a wonderful man. And this leader says, and he was a wonderful man. But what the lay leader did that I thought was so wise was just say, I don't know, but what can help you right now? And so this man said, well, bring me this. And I learned listening to this lay leader that it is Hindu practice to take food, to offer it to the deities, and then to eat the food as part of worship. So he would say, please take this type of food offered to the deity that is dear to me, and then bring it back to me. And so this was something that was very meaningful for him. And then he lost interest in some of the practices. And this leader said, don't worry, the divine is never going to not honor you. Don't worry. And what is really important to this man as he was dying is, will my children be all right? Will my wife be all right? And so this lay leader reassured him. And then the lay leader talked about their own struggle of how to understand, because the lay leader said, I understand in my mind why these things happened, why this death happened, but my emotions are slower. And so I do my practices. And I said, tell me what practices you do. And this lay leader said, I journal, I write about what's happening. I use the prayer beads and I go through the names of the deities. And that brings me enormous comfort. And I listen to devotions. And so the concept of spiritual struggle, I think, is not just for the patient or the family, but also for the leaders and for those caring for them. So there. Disrespect of your tradition. This is a story for a secular humanist woman. So this is a person, secular humanists do not only not believe in a divine, they don't believe in anything supernatural. One of them said to me, we're talking no angels, no nothing. We just, believe in what we can experience on this earth. So this woman had gone to see her father who was dying, and he had said, he was a humanist. Both of her parents were humanists, and they did not believe in anything divine. And so she has come from out of town to be with her father. This is going to be her conversation with him as he is dying. He's going to have care stopped. And so they're having their conversation, and he had been crystal clear. He wanted to put in the chart, no chaplains. I do not want to see a chaplain. Now, some chaplains believe in not reading the chart because they want their own experience of the patient, which turned out to be an unfortunate decision in this case because the chaplain comes in while this woman is having her final conversation with her father and says, oh, I'm so glad you got here. He's interrupting to say that. But Mr. So-and-so, on the good side, at least you're going to a better place, which she said causes her father to pull off his oxygen mask. And she said, please forgive me, but this is what he said: get the F out of my room. I do not want to see you. I do not want to deal with you. And she's like, she said it was just so frustrating for her father. And she said, they're Midwestern people. She said, oh, Dad, the poor guy, because the chaplain goes racing out. And he said, I do not have time for this. I am dying. And she said, I think a lot of humanists really experience disrespect of our beliefs and our practices when we're in the hospital. And so I don't have a story of disrespect. Well, I do. I didn't find it, but one story of disrespect from a Hindu person I interviewed was, if I have a statue of my God sitting out, I need you to not set it near my shoes. I need you not to move it. I need you to respect. This is a part of my worship, and do not move my God in my hospital room. And this is another reason that chaplains really need to know from the patient who is important to you. which of the deities do you have what you need? Do you need a statue? Do you need a picture? Do you have what you need? And if you do, how do we, in your hospital room, in your hospital situation, honor your God in this time and in this way? So, takeaways from this lecture, and I apologize, this has not been interactive. Good news, I'm about to shut up. Partnership with religious, spiritual, and secular leaders are essential for reasons of both knowledge and trust. Developing tradition-aware chaplain competencies could improve patient care and increase the chaplain's profession-specific contributions to the healthcare team. Now, I'm going to stop screen sharing. This is my email, but as we've all been clear, I will send all of this to Zachary G, and he will make it available. This is okay? So let me stop sharing. Thank you enormously for your attention. Now, please, you talk.
Judy G, thank you so much for, wow, for an eye-opening presentation. Absolutely incredible. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed hearing the stories. I think the stories, the narratives, at least for me, helped me to relate to the situation as opposed to just reading the theory. So that was great for me. I do want to open it up to questions. We have a few minutes left, if that's okay. And so anyone is welcome to unmute and jump in.
And I'd like to also say, please feel free to make comments or tell your own story. It doesn't have to just be questions, if that's okay with you, Zachary G.
Absolutely.
I have a comment, Zachary Ji.
Hi, Ushaji.
Hi, namaste.
Namaste.
So, Judith Ji, thank you. This is the first straight answer I got to the question, why me? What does your faith tradition say? And so many, in so many faiths, so many traditions, people have always skirted around the question. And the truth is, I don't know. That's the best answer, I think. And thank you for giving me that answer. Thank you. Lovely presentation, by the way. Thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you, Zachary Ji, for bringing in Judith Ji. I appreciate it.
Ushaji, I can't claim credit. Gaurav Ji supported this immensely. I see Mangala Ji's hand is up.
Yeah, Judith Ji, namaste, and thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. It was really very educational to listen to all the stories and people's experiences. It certainly helps. And whatever you heard from the Hindu chaplains about the Hindu experiences is very true. Majority of the Hindus, we believe in karma, and because when you cannot explain something, when it is something beyond our control, that seems to be the only logical explanation. And again, it is true that all of us Hindus believe in reincarnation. So we tend to accept the fact that something happened to me and I didn't ask for it as, yes, it must be, something that I may have done in a previous life. And, maybe I deserve this, but I put my trust in God to guide me through this. And I accept God's, decision. So all of us who have gone through our loved ones in the hospitals, we know that ultimately karma theory is what helps people accept, along with many of the rituals. And of course, there are many, many, many rituals that Indian people follow. So while it is impossible to be educated on every one of them, but I think it helps for the chaplains to at least understand what is important to that particular person, in terms of having an idol or having a ritual or having a prayer recited to them or whatever. So yeah, definitely I agree with what you presented, and it's certainly helpful for chaplains to be educated about certain traditions, or at least make an attempt to educate themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bangalaji. I appreciate that. I want to reflect as well that some of the stories resonated with me, and the discussions of prasad and the chanting and everything is nice to hear that. I don't hear these discussions in general areas as much, so I'm grateful that you're bringing this forward. Nick had a comment. Nick, thank you for this. I'll read it aloud. In a Reddit discussion, a Protestant was telling how they would be asked for communion by Catholic patients and family. The debate was whether this was okay, given that it's the patients who are requesting it. The chaplain informed the patients that they were not Catholic. They offered to call a priest. In some instances, the patients said yes, call a priest. Others said no. Will you give it? No, will you give it to me instead? What are your thoughts on this?
Nick, or Nick G, if you're maybe a Hindu person, I must say, I don't know. My belief was the department should honor what the Roman Catholic Church says about its own sacraments. But if the patient is asking, I understand the dilemma. If the patient or the chaplain could get someone who is Catholic to go with them, I think that might be ideal. It certainly is a difficult situation that you've described, and truly the bottom line is I don't know the answer.
Just another thought on that. I'm a retired chaplain educator, as Judy knows. I've had people who say, I'm Catholic, but I want you to bring me communion. And if I would say, well, tell me more about that. And at times they would say, I'm alienated from my Catholic church. I'm not even supposed to get communion with them, and yet I need communion, and I very much want you to do it. But that's just an example of just hearing more. If they say, no, I want you to do it, maybe to ask them to tell you a little more about that, because, it might be that that's really okay with them, or it might be that they really do want to minister of the Eucharist or someone else that you might could get.
Well, and I wonder too, Jan, what it would be like to offer, and I wonder this, Nick, what it would be like to say, I can certainly bring you communion from my tradition, as long as you understand my tradition is not Catholic, but I'd be honored to do that. If that would maybe be a middle way. Oh yes, Jan's follow-up is great. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, it's David. I can answer actually that question. I'm a former Catholic priest and also the Christian chaplain, currently in the hospice. From the perspective of the Catholic Church, the sacrament can be brought only by the priest or by the extraordinary minister of Holy Communion. And I dealt with many Christian, Hindu, Muslim chaplains, and we are always recommended to call to the local church and inform them that there is a person, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, that would like to receive the Holy Communion. I think it's related specifically to this particular denomination, and I cannot see myself, for example, to bring communion to different denomination because it doesn't agree with my beliefs. And I think patients deserve the visit from the minister from their own denomination.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Nick added a comment. Yes, David, but it's a question of who gets to say and who gets to decide, the patient or the Catholic Church. And I could see this being an ongoing discussion on and on. This is certainly not one that we may be able to come to a conclusion on today.
Tactfully said, Zachary.
Thank you. And I see Mangalaji has her hand up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Gauravji because we're just about out of time. Mangalaji.
Yeah. So, Judith, I'm just wondering, when we are talking about a dying person's last wish, it's not like they ask for gold and silver and a throne. So I perfectly understand why some religious traditions may conflict with, what to give them. But if we look at the much bigger picture, would God punish us for, helping a dying person? I mean, that's what I feel. I don't know if we should be afraid of helping someone meet their last wish, especially something as simple as that. Just my thoughts, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mangalaji. I really, it is a very rich subject, and so good to hear from Gauraji at this point. And
Yeah, I want to say, Judy, yeah, I wasn't expecting this talk, but it was amazing. The amount of insight, the amount of intimacy that this conversation created is amazing. So I congratulate you on picking the topic for your research because it's so important. Very clearly, it needs to be done, and the fact that you're going through this meticulously and with the degree of rigor that this requires, the degree of respect that this requires, it's very heartening to see. So thank you for doing this work. And we're so happy to collaborate with you on this and, see what we can do as well. Just today, earlier in the day, a few of us were in a meeting and we heard about one of our friends who's in his last few months, and he was berated by the doctor for holding on too long, or basically, do you want to punish your family for dragging them along and that sort of stuff, which was just like the worst thing to say to a patient. And so, of course, the doctor later apologized the next day, but it's so heartless that it was unimaginable that these sort of things go on. So what you're doing will bring that awareness to hopefully not just the chaplains, but also to the medical fraternity, including what you said about having the deity not near the shoe. The staff needs to know all of this stuff because they may not be aware and they may be disrespecting the tradition. Though I can imagine there's a lot going on. There's too many traditions with too many things going on, but some degree of awareness would certainly be helpful. So thank you for that. Zachary.
Thank you for those thoughts, Gauravji. Well, we are at 1 minute till. I just want to again thank Judy G for her time. Thank you all for attending today. We will have a YouTube version of this talk posted within a few days, and I'll send that out through True Karma, the website that you use to log in. Also, a little plug, we have our graduation ceremony coming up next Friday. That is also on True Karma, the registration link for it. And I'm happy to send out an edition of our Kutumba magazine, which is our journal, which is our journal that we send out twice a year. And I also want to encourage, if we have any writers in the room, whether scholarly or your personal experience, we are looking for folks to contribute to the journal as well from all traditions. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Judy G, for your expertise, and Gauravji for helping organize this. And Nick has a question: are these webinars regularly scheduled? They are indeed regularly scheduled. We are typically on the 4th Friday of the month at 4 p.m. And I will continue to send out reminders as new ones get scheduled. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. I appreciated being here.
thank you so
Jen.
much. What a privilege. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.